classy. It's the reason to stay nasty. It's Christmas time and I ain't doing fine. Forget the season cheer, it only makes me feel weird. It's depressing, it's messing with me. I'm dressed in my best and I feel I wish it was New Year. Gotta go, my drink is here. String the lights up, Mrs. Claus. Serve the ham on all four paws. Roast the chestnut, spike the punch. Save that turkey for my lunch.
Welcome back to the old foundry, ladies and gentlemen. There was a video I made not too long ago on stack molding. To give a good summary of it, it just showed how you didn't have to have a huge flask and a huge drag to be able to get you know, some of the jobs done that you need to get done. For instance, let's say you want to make a plaque, okay? You don't have to have 6 inches of sand just to make a plaque. What you can do is you can use the stack of flasks to ram it up. For instance, let me turn you around here. If I wanted to ram this up, I would make sure I had enough sand all the way around to keep it from leaking out, and then, you know, just ram it up. Let's see, I would turn that a little bit more. So you ram it up, right? You make your splash basin, your runner, you make your end gates. The end gates, yeah, that's a little better. The end gates would be however many end gates you want to have to fill this up very quickly. I hope I got you in a good angle. And in this case, I would dust it. I'd put the backing sand on it, tuck it, ram it up the rest of the way, and then, you know, you got plenty of sand right here to keep this from the hydraulic pressure from the molten metal from pushing the sand anywhere, okay? Well, I made a bunch of stack flasks so that I could illustrate the use of stack flasks. See if I can get you back towards me. And everything went fine, except when it came to actual stacking, right? Well, the stack flasks, when I had, let's say this is the bottommost one. You have a splash basin, and you've got something in here you're molding or going to be pouring. Now comes the next level. You've done rammed this up. It's all ready to go. Except what you got to do is you got to make certain that the hole, the sprue that you punch through there, they all line up. However many of these stack flasks you got, you have to, you know, line them up so that you know the first one you pour doesn't stop dead, you know, because sand got in the way and it froze up or something, whatever the case might have been. But so what I was doing, I was concentrating on, I was looking down the hole, making sure that lined right up to the splash basin, but I wasn't looking anywhere else, making sure that was lining up. Okay, that was very important. But the problem was, look at this. They're at an angle. It's cantered some. And once you lay this down, you don't move it. Okay? If you lift it up again, you might, when you lift it up, have some of this fall out. Or if you're down here and you try to shift it, there's two sand faces that are going to be touching each other like that, like this, might just go crunch, and some of that sand that you displace might go into your mold cavity. Okay, so what you got to work on is when you get all these stack flasks, you know, all your molds done, you got to work on to where they line up just like this, pardon me, so that you can get your clamps or weights. In this case, it's going to be a clamp. You get in there and you clamp it down so that none of it'll move when you're pouring, right? None of it'll lift, none of it'll shift, or anything like that. Well, the way this is built is that, you know, the ones we used to have in the foundries on the ships I was on, they had brackets on one of the sides, you know, opposing. Let's say there's brackets on this side, brackets on that side, where you would have, let's say this is going in there, you would have a piece of angle iron over here with a hole in it, and the angle iron over here would have a bolt in it, not a bolt, but a shaft, a little tiny stem that you would come along and you would line up the stem to go in that hole, and every time you used one of these, they would all line up. Then you could put a mold weight on it, or you could put clamps on it, depending on how many of these you have. Okay, well, for me to make that line, you know, that setup, it's going to take a lot of angle iron. Well, I'm not going to use iron. You could use aluminum, angle aluminum, and you know, you have to modify some bolts. Like whenever you have any of your machine bolts, you have to have them where there's a neck on them that's got no threads on them. Okay, that can act as your bolt to go the part that would go into the hole. You just cut the head off of the bolt. You take you know, trim it down a little bit to where it's more like a cone rather than just a cut off, and then it can go into that hole. It's going to take a lot of work to get all of these set up where they would line up like that. Well, I thought of, you know, got to solve that problem of things going this way and that just because I'm lining up the holes. You wouldn't be able to clamp on it because, like, you got holes here and you got holes here. Your mold cavity might be very close to that, and it might bust open and you got molten aluminum going all over the place, or molten any metal that you're pouring going all over the place. So I decided to make a jig. Now, what's a jig? Well, we're not talking about like the Irish jig where a person would dance, okay? We're talking about a fixture or a device that ensures that you can do a machining process the same time every time. In this case, though, I'm not machining anything. But what I did do is, I've seen these before, so it wasn't like I invented this. I went and got some 3/4 inch plywood, so it's nice and stiff. It won't warp, you know, very much over time unless you get it soaked wet. And then put some of these on it so they would be off the floor if you ever set it on the floor. In this case, it would be off the molding. Pardon me. The molding setup in here, and you could easily get it. What I did, okay, I went and put, let's do it the right way. I went and put one of these stack flasks on this board, gave myself a little bit of room all the way around, and put a couple of, see if I can get you looking down, put a couple of strips of wood here, so that anytime you put a stack flask in there, you put it up against it and it'll be the same place each and every time, okay, no matter how many you do. I made certain that I had at least 1/2 inch of sand all the way around for safety's sake, for strength's sake. And then once I got these two things set up, and I've got it all, well, see here, let's say this is my first project. I set this inside, you know, I don't cross the line where this 1/2-inch gap is, or rather where this 1/2-inch wall is, so that's nice and solid and it'll be safe. You arrange whatever you're ramming up inside this you know, container, and then I've also got a splash basin here. Okay, the splash basin is always going to be in the same spot within this stack flasks. Okay, so that's a little less work for me to have to worry about later on again. So I ram this up, turn it upside down. I've got the impression of the splash basin. I got the impression of the in this case the plaque. Then all I've got to do is get myself some end gates, cut myself a runner, you know, and it's ready to go. Okay, and that's not the only thing that this can be used for, plaques, I mean. For instance, I have this pattern that I made for wrapping tool, and the wrapping tool is probably inside here. It looks exactly like that. This is a very lightweight plastic, APB? No, ABS? ABS. Let's say it's ABS plastic. I can't remember. I still can't remember. Okay. Anyways, plastic came out of the 3D printer. I designed from memory of a wrapping tool that we used in the past. I don't know who invented that one. Could have been any molder. Could have been a pattern maker. Could have been a machinist. Who knows? Anyway, here would be the next one. I've already got the plaque mold on deck. This would be the next one to be rammed up. I ram this up, and the only difference is, because this is going to be the same spot, the only difference is that instead of having a splash basin here, it'll be a splash basin and sprue hole that goes to the splash basin for at the bottommost stack flask. Okay, and this was the you know, the solution to the problem that I had, because I am going to be making a couple of these, at least one of these in the near future, and I wanted to make certain that I didn't have to, you know, flip-flop the stack flasks. It is very important that you line up the sides here so that when you clamp it, you're not going to be crushing the sand. You're simply going to be reducing any cracks in the sides here. Well, this would be a crack in this area where the molten metal might push its way out. Okay, where we are right here, we don't have, or I don't have, a foundry deck that won't explode. Okay, I've got just standard cement out here in the driveway, which is where I'd be pouring it. If I poured it in here, this is just standard cement floor in here, and the see if I can get you a little, instead of looking down at the floor all the time. If I poured anything and it's leaked out, the odds are real good we'd have a little steam explosion because of all the years that this has been exposed to the Florida, you know, summer hot humidity. Like, for a reason why I haven't made any, you know, videos recently, because it was hot as blazes up here, and it felt like I was wearing a wet blanket at the same time. Okay, the humidity up here in Florida is rotten, and I would love to move back to Connecticut, but those guys are way too liberal for me, and they have state taxes. Connecticut, you want anybody to stay in Connecticut? I know there may not be anything you can do about all that liberalness, but you can do like Florida does, don't have state taxes. Okay? California has state taxes, and we know what they're like. But where I grew up, I don't know if they had, well, I wouldn't care even if I knew it did have state taxes in California when I was growing up, because I wasn't going to pay them. Didn't care much about that at all. Loved California. Where I grew up in the Sacramento Valley, it was great. Hot as blazes, but hardly any humidity. Okay, it might have been 114 degrees outside in the shade, but it wasn't 99% humidity like here. Okay, it was very dry, almost like Arizona kind of dry, but not quite that much. But and I loved it. You know, California, you could go, what, 3/4 of an hour east, you'd be in the mountains. You go 3/4 of an hour to the west, you'd be at the shore. It was great. There's so many things to do. But I wouldn't move back to California to save my life. You know, I'm subsisting on Navy retirement pay right now. And while the Navy taught me a great deal, they don't pay you a lot. All right, you make up for the lack of pay other things. You know, other good things that happen for you. Okay, but you don't get paid a lot. So I'm not going to give up what pay I'm getting to live out in California, where, I mean, a regular, like this house that I'm in right now, which is about 1,818 square feet, would cost you $500,000. Here in Florida, what was it, $86,000? You know, for a house this size, at least back when I bought it. So no, Sandrammer is not going to move back out to California no matter what he liked about California. And Sandrammer ain't going to move up to Connecticut, though I loved it up there too. Beautiful, beautiful state. It's just not, you know, the amount of money you have to spend to live in those states, it's just not worth it. Okay? So, I am here in this hot doggone Florida, where finally it cooled down enough so that I can come out into the garage out here and not leave behind 1/4 of my body weight in sweat on the floor, just trying to do things. And so that's why you haven't seen me for a little while. So I do have projects in the near future. It's not going to be months and months before I do anything. And but this is just this video was just to show a person how you can use your imagination to fix a problem. Okay, now my imagination didn't drive this. It was something I remembered seeing in the past in the foundry that one of our guys went and devised, and it solved the problem. Once I get my lazy butt going, the odds are real good that I'm going to grab some of that aluminum angle iron that I have up there, make a bunch of angles, and then make a bunch of pins that go in through the angles, and finally I won't need this anymore. I'll just you know, be lining up automatically with the pins and the angle iron holes to line everything up right. Okay, so it was a very easy project. I just sat this down, Gave myself, what, a good inch all the way around. Well, a little less of an inch on one side. But I gave myself a lip all the way around to work on this. Made my perimeter. Put these down, you know, just screwed them in. And now I've got a jig that'll be used each and every time. All I got to do is just line it up here. This just seems like, yeah, there we go. Line it up here where these handles don't hit those walls. And it's going to be like that each and every time, okay? So, here's a problem that might be messing with you guys. Now you can fix this yourself, and we will see you in a short while, like a week or so, like that. And so, to all you guys out there that have been, we're in the Navy, Liberty Call, and for the rest, please come back and see me again. Bye-bye.